Welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa's Thread. Today on the channel, we'll be learning how to make this stylish rolled up collar gown with a bell sleeve. If it's something you're interested in, keep watching. Let's get started. So I've marked out my vertical measurements: the shoulder, the chest point, the under bust, the bust point, the waist, the hip point, and then the full length. Now on my shoulder line, I'm going to take half of my shoulder measurement. That's the shoulder measurement divided by 2, and I'm going to mark it down. Next, I'm going to take a neck width of 3.5 inches, and then I will mark it down. So note that we're drafting out our front pattern, okay? Now from this point, I will just go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant and connect it to meet the neck width like so. All right, then the next thing I'm going to do is also take my shoulder measurement on my chest line so that I can get a straight line, and then I'll connect it to meet the 1 inch point. So we have that point. The next thing we're going to do is to mark our dart. So to get a dart, you're going to use your bust pan. That's nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus half of an inch. So I'm going to be adding my stitching allowance to this at once, and I'll just mark it down from the bust point down to the full length of this. Okay, after that, I'll just connect the points I've marked together. So the next thing we're going to do is that we'll go over to the armhole depth line and we get the midpoint of that line, make a mark at that point. Then we're going to connect from that point to the bust point. So you can see how I'm placing my rule to mark this point. All right. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to be marking half of an inch on both sides of the under bust measurement. So if you're on the busty side, you can use 1 inch instead. So I'm using half inch on both sides and also making these marks at the waist. Then I'll just connect the points I've made together. After that, I'll connect it to the hip point. But before that, I want my dart to stop 2 inches before my hip point. So I will go up from the hip point by 2 inches, and I will make a mark at that point. Then I'm going to connect it to meet that point. Now I'm going to connect the top part, which is the under bust part, to the bust part, the bust point, using the curved part of my rule. Now on the armhole line, I'll go down by 1.5 inches, and then I'll connect that to the bust point. Okay, so to avoid shortage for this dart, we're going to be marking that 1.5 inches we took. We're going to be marking it this way. Okay, you're going to just mark that. So mark it in the slanted form, the way the first line is moving. So ensure to mark it that way. So we have that down. The next thing we're going to do is to just impute our horizontal measurement. So you're going to take your round bust, mark that down, take the dart intake you have at the chest line, you're going to mark it down, and then add your seam allowance. So for this, because we're going to be stitching this inside, like we're going to be having an inseam finishing, I used a stitching allowance of 1 inch, okay, because you don't want it to be bulky inside your dress. So you're going to do the same measurement at the waist area. You're going to take quarter of your round waist, you add your dart intake, and then you mark your stitching allowance. Do the same thing at the hip point and also at the full length. Okay, so you're going to take quarter of your round hip measurement and just add your seam allowance. That's your inseam allowance. But then for the the full length, to get the full length measurement, you're going to minus 1 inch from what you have at the hip. But for now, the next thing we're going to do is just to connect our armhole So we have that down. Now for the neck depth of this is the front part of our dress, okay, the front pattern of our dress. We'll be using a neck depth of 4 inches for this. You can use 3.5, but I'm using 4 inches for this, okay, and I'm just going to connect this with a curve. So we have the pattern down for the front, okay, so this is our center front and then the side front, and I'm just going in with my scissors to cut it out. So this is what we have for the front pattern. After I've finished, we'll go ahead to work on our back piece. Now for the back, I've also gone ahead to mark out my vertical measurement, and then I marked out a dart allowance. What I have here, the space I have here is just about 2 inches for the zipper. It is not my zipper yet, so I just marked 2 inches point and then made a line and then marked my vertical measurement. Now I'm going on to mark the same neck width I have in front, which is 3.5, and I'm marking half of my shoulder measurement at that point, and I'll go down by 1 inch to get my shoulder slope and connect it to the neck width. So note that whatever you're marking for your neck width in front needs to match with what you're marking for the back. Now I'll repeat the same shoulder measurement on my chest line, and then I'll connect them together. So the only measurement we don't have at this back point is the under bust measurement, okay? Apart from that, we have the other measurements we have. Now on the armhole depth, I just went ahead to get the midpoint of that. So for the back, we'll be drafting a normal dart, okay? We're not going to use the princess dart like we did in front, just a normal dart. So I just went on to mark the armhole of my back. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my dart line by marking down my bust span. So I'm marking this from the chest line down to the hip area. So I'm just going to mark them down, okay, and after that I will connect it together. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is that on the waist area, we'll go in and out on both sides by half of an inch. Now on the chest line, we're supposed to connect it to the chest point, but I'll come down from my chest point by 1 inch and then connect it to that. So I didn't want my dart to get to my chest point exactly, okay? And I'll just connect both of them to that point. Now, just like what we did in front, we'll come up from the hip by 2 inches and then we connect the dart leg to that. Okay, that is all for the dart of the back, just a normal dart. So we'll just go in and mark our body measurement. So if you want to make this a princess dart at the back, you just connect from the top of your dart to the midpoint of your armhole, and then you have your princess dart. That's if that's what you want. So I'm going in to mark my horizontal measurement. So the only place we'll be adding additional allowance is at the waist. Remember, we have our dart intake at the waist, so that is where we're going to add like additional measurements apart from the stitching allowance we'll be adding to this. So I'm just going in to ensure that I have my measurements well taken. So this is one thing you need to take note of. Ensure you take the right measurements when you're marking, okay, especially if you're marking directly to your fabrics. So ensure you take your right measurements, and I will just go on to connect those points I've marked together. So ensure to use your curve rule to mark the curve parts, okay, that the parts that are curved, use your curve rule to mark that. So the next thing I want to do is to mark our zip allowance. Remember I said I've not gone ahead to mark that. So on the waist measurement, the waist point, I'm going in by half of an inch, and then I will connect that to my chest line like so, and then to the hip line. So just watch what I'm doing. So I'm going to connect that this way. This is to eliminate any form of zip bulge. All right, now I can comfortably take my zip allowance. So I'm using a zip allowance of 1 inch for this. Remember I said the finishing of this dress will be inseam, so you need lesser allowance so that it is not bulky inside. So I just marked that 1 inch to the full length, okay, following the curve I have on this. So you'll notice what I will have at the end of the day. So remember we snatched in the waist by 1/2 inch. Okay, that's so that we'll not have our zip bulging by the time we finish. Right, so we have our zip allowance right here. Now for the neckline of the back, we're going to have a V neckline for the back, considering our rolled up collar, okay, because of the collar we're adding to this. So we're just going to mark a slanted line from our neck width down to the point we had our line. So ensure to not mark into your zipper allowance line that is not included in your neckline. Okay, so you can see how I marked this. So this is what we have for the back pattern, and I will just go ahead and cut it out. So what I'm going to do is to open up my darts at the back. I will just take off what I have at the back. Okay, this will help me to trace out the darts on my fabric by the time I want to stitch it, so I'm not confused about where to stitch my darts to. So I'm just going to take this off and leave that part open. So this is what the back piece will look like. Okay, so go ahead and cut on our fabrics. This is the front pattern. I've gone ahead to cut it on my fabric. I added 1/2 inch to the shoulder, and then to the neckline of the front, and then to the base I added 1 inch to the base. Okay, that will help me to turn this out. This is for the back, so ensure to just make markings on your fabric so you're not confused if you're using like a crepe fabric. Now for the front part, sorry, for the back pattern, I also did the same thing, added 1/2 inch to the shoulder and also to the neckline, and then 1 inch to the base. Now this is what we have for the patterns of our dress. Okay, this is what it's looking like. So what we're going to do is that we're going to start off with the back. So I'm going to take this to cut out on my lining, but I'm going to make my lining 1 inch shorter than what I had for the main piece of fabric. I hope you understand that. So now I'm going to trace out what I have here using my chalk. I will just follow the lines, like the opening I have for the back pattern, and just trace it out. This will enable me to just stitch my dart on this perfectly later on, okay, without struggling with this. So I'm just going to trace this, ensure that I'm following the right marks I have on my paper, and just trace out that line. Okay, I'll do it for both sides of the back piece. Remember we have 2 of that. Also repeat the same thing for the lining piece also. Okay, so I'll just take off my pattern and show you what I have. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so we just go ahead and then we just pick that up and stitch it down for the dart to stay in place. So you can just pick that up and then stitch down your dart for the 4 parts of your back piece. Now for the front, we're going to open this up so that we can start stitching on this. So you're going to align this right side to right side. Okay, I'm just making marks on the wrong side of my fabric so I'm not confused. Then I'm going to take this over to the machine. I will place them this way and stitch it down. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching. And ensure to iron open your seams. Okay, for the back also, I've also stitched it down. I also ironed open my seam for both pieces of the back. So remember, whatever you're doing to your main piece, you're also going to repeat that for the lining piece. Now we're going to align the shoulders of our piece, placing them right side to right side, and then we're going to stitch the shoulders down by 1/2 inch on both sides. So the next thing I want to work on is the collar of our piece. Now you're going to take this measurement after your zipper allowance. Remember, we're using a zipper allowance of 1 inch. So you're going to place your tape from after that point and take the measurement you have around there. So for mine, after taking the measurement I actually placed mine on fold and I had 13.5 inches. Okay, that makes it 27 inches in total. Now I'm going to be drafting this out on my pattern paper before I cut on the fabric. Okay, so now what I'll do is to first of all mark a width of 5 inches. So I want my collar to be 5 inches wide. Remember, it is rolled up, it has like a fold effect. So I'm marking 5 inches down on my paper firstly, and I will just connect those points together. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the length which I just measured. So take note that the line we have at the bottom there, it's going to be where will be attached to the neckline. So you're going to mark the measurement you took at the top and also at the bottom part. And next thing you're going to do is to just connect the points together after ensuring that you have your lines matching perfectly at the top and also at the base. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create that triangle curve at the end of the collar. I'll come out from the top part like so by 3 inches, and I will just make a slanted line to meet this point. Okay, so now I'll be adding my stitching allowance to this. I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch to this. So we can go ahead to cut out our pattern now. You can decide to not add your seam allowance to your pattern and just add that while you're cutting your fabric. Okay, we're going to cut on our fabric. So we're going to be folding our fabric in a bias method. So you can see how I'm folding this. I have this first fold is in a triangular form, and then I'll fold it up again like so to give me a fold of 4. So remember, our pattern will be on fold. Okay, so we just folded that up. You fold first in a triangular form and then you fold again. So you're going to have one end of this closed totally. So see how I'm placing this on the pattern, placing the closed end on the closed edge I have, and also the part that will sit at the bottom is also at the closed end. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. And then I'm just going ahead to pin it down so that it stays in place and it's easier for me to just cut through this. Okay, so I have this placed properly and I'll just go ahead to cut it out. Finish cutting out. So the next thing I'm going to do is to take in my interfacing. I'm going to iron my interfacing to this. So this is what it looks like. You can see the shape we have at the ends. Okay, I'm just marking the wrong side of my fabric, and I'll just take this to the ironing table and then iron my air stay to the wrong side. So this is what it looks like after I finish. I'm going to fold this up again, and then I will just stitch it by 1/2 inch, the allowance we added on this point and also on this other side. So I've finished doing that and I've turned it over to the right side. So we have only one end of this open. Now we're going to be placing this around the neckline of our gown. But before that, we're going to make a notch to indicate the midpoint of this. So you want to have them equal on both sides, okay, on the left and the right side. So it's important you take the midpoint of this. So I'll just place them properly and then make a notch at that point. And I will also do the same thing to the main piece of my fabric, that's the neckline. I'll make a notch. I'll also make a notch also on my lining. Okay, so remember I said whatever you're doing to the lining, you'd also do to your, whatever you're doing to your main piece, you also repeat to your lining. So now I'm going to be placing them, three of them together. I will just place down the main fabric right side facing me, and then I will place my collar to that. So I'm just trying to align this first, okay? Then I'll bring in my lining piece also, and I will align the midpoint. So what you're going to be doing is to sandwich your collar in between the lining piece and then the main piece, placing your lining piece and your main piece right side to right side. And then you just pin all three of them together around the neckline. Ensure you're placing this properly, okay, and just pin them together. After ensuring that you've placed them well, just go ahead and stitch it together by 1/2 inch to keep them in place. So this is what I have after I finished stitching down. And after that, I'll just turn this over so you see what I mean, like what we have. So this is what it looks like after we finish doing that, okay? Now for this to sit nicely around this area, you have to make notches, give it a very good press, okay? Make notches around that stitch part you stitched, and then you give it a very good press. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that. Make sure you iron this. So this is what I have after I stitched that down. Okay, this is what it looks like. Now I'm aligning the zip area of my main piece together. We want to stitch this together. So I'm going to measure from the top of my dress where I want my zip to end. Okay, I'm going to take the measurements of that and I'm going to mark it down. So I'm using 18 inches for the length of my zip, and then from the ends of this I'm going to take where I want my slit to end. So I'm adding a slit to this dress. Okay, so from the ends, go ahead and take the measurement for your slit. So I used 6 inches from the hem of my dress. I went up by 6 inches and then I marked it down, okay, for where I want the slit to end. So now I'll take this over to the machine and I will stitch it by 1 inch together. So I'm doing this for only the main piece. So this is what it looks like after I finish. I will just go ahead and place my zipper to the main piece of my fabric only. Okay, so we still have our lining piece sitting freely inside of this. So I'm turning this to the right side to just show you what we have. Okay, so this is the zipper for this. Remember, we only stitch this down to the main piece of our piece. So now to stitch this to turn the lining piece, you're going to just place the lining piece on top of what you had already, aligning it to your main piece, okay, and stitch it down. So I'll just go ahead and just place this down. I'm going to be pinning this down, okay, and just turn that over and then pin it down to the end. You repeat the same process for the other parts of the lining zipper, okay, the lining zipper part of your piece. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. So you're just going to align them right side to right side. It's more like sandwiching your zipper in between your main piece and then your lining piece. You do the same thing to the other side and then take it over to the machine and stitch. So while stitching, ensure you stitch closely to your first stitch or just a little bit far from it. You should not be too far away from it. So I finished doing that. Okay, I finished stitching, and what I'm going to do is to take off my pins and then show you what I have. Okay, so I have my zipper extending at the top. I will just cut it off, okay, and ensure to close any loose ends you have at the top so that your zipper doesn't pull out by the time you turn it over to the right side. And I'm just going ahead to turn this over to the right side. Okay, so this is what we have. So when you're pinning for your lining piece, you're going to pin that to the ends, like to the length of your dress, so that your slit can sit perfectly inside also. So I'm just going to bring out every part of this dress that I have perfectly, and this is what it looks like. And I'm just ensuring that my zipper works perfectly. So this is what the dress looks like at the back of it. Now you can make use of any sleeve of your choice, but I'm making use of a bell sleeve. I'm gonna head to fold my fabric on fold of 4, and the width I have there is about 15 inches, and I also have a basic sleeve pattern which I'm going to slash and spread to give me what I have want for my sleeve. So I'm just going to get the midpoint of that, and I'm going to make a line to the top and then slash it to the top. So we're just using the slash and spread method for our sleeve. Like I said, you can use any sleeve of your choice. Okay, so now I'm just going to place this pattern on top of this. So ensure you're placing the center front of your pattern to the center front of your fold, where you have like the double fold, where you have your ends closed. Place that down, and then just extend the other part of your sleeve to the other end. Okay, so we're just going to pin it down on the ends. Pin it down to stay in place, so it will be easy for us to just work with this. And after that, we'll go ahead to cut it out. So after cutting this on my main piece, I also went ahead to cut out a lining for this. If you choose not to line your piece, that's no problem with that. Okay, so we're going to start off by laying this right side of our main piece to the right side of our lining, and then you stitch the ends by 1/2 inch. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that, and then I ensure to iron it down. Now I'm placing this lining to lining, main piece to main piece, and then I went ahead to stitch it down by 1 inch. So now I'm going to turn this over to the right side, placing my piece together. So this is what it looks like. We have all our stitches inside. That is what we're trying to achieve for this dress. So this is both parts of the sleeve after I've finished ironing them down. Now I'm going to bring in my dress, and then I'm going to pin this around this. So this can be a bit tricky, but just watch closely so that you get a hang of what I'm trying to explain. Now we're going to start with the main piece. What I'm doing is to align the joining of my sleeve to the joining of the armhole. That is where I'm going to start off with, but I'm making a notch to indicate the midpoint of my sleeve. It's important to indicate this point, and then I'm going to pin this around that and stitch it down. So I've done it for one of the sleeve. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. I'm going to pin the right side of my main piece of fabric to the right side of my main piece of the dress part. I hope you got what I'm trying to explain. And then I will pin it down. So we're pinning the right side of the sleeve to the right side of the dress of our main piece of fabric. You're going to pin that down, and then you stitch it by 1/2 inch all round. This is one piece of the sleeve. I'm just bringing it out to show you what it looks like. This is one piece of the sleeve. This is the inside, and this is what it looks like on this part. It's not folding, okay, it's free. So now we're going to repeat the same process for this other one. So you want to watch closely, but before we do this, I already gone ahead to open my sides, the side seam of my lining piece. That will be the point where I'm going to turn this over to the right side. Okay, so you need to have an open end so that I can use that to work. Now this is what I'm talking about for the sleeve, for the lining and the main piece. So you're going to ensure that they are moving in the same direction. You don't have the top part of your lining one end and then the down part of your main piece one end. So ensure that where you have your stitched, where you stitch, that's the side piece, is aligning. So you can see how this is right now. They are all aligning, they are all on the same frequency. So we're going to take this over, we're going to place this right side to right side, and then pin this all round this. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. Okay, so ensure that your sleeve is moving in the same direction. That's the main piece of your sleeve, and the lining of your sleeve is moving in the same direction so that you don't end up mixing that up. So just go ahead, pin them all through to the end, and then take it over to the machine and you stitch it down by 1/2 inch. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Now I'm just going to open this up to the right side so you can see. So ensure that your hands can freely pass through that, and there's no part of the dress hanging. So for the opening part, you're just going to use a hemming gum to hem that down so that that part stays closed, or you can just stitch that down. So I'm just using my paints to hold it down so I can show you the finished product of our dress. This is what it looks like. We can see our seams, they are all looking clean, it's all looking nice. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the right side of the dress. This is what it looks like. Now I'm going to turn this over to the inside of the dress so that you see what it looks like. Also, you can see what it looks like. We don't have any stitch line on this, so you just use the hemming gum to close up that end so that you don't have any stitching line showing outside the dress. This brings us to the end of this tutorial. Let me know in the comment section if you found this video helpful. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel, do well to subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up, and please share my videos so that I can get more views. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.